We've heard the saying, the grass is always greener on the other side of the fence. And probably as parents, we might be a little guilty of sort of changing it to the child is always better on the other side of the fence. I mean, how many times do we catch ourselves like looking at the child next door or across the street or our children's friends or our friends' children and going, well, look, they're tying their shoelace and my child isn't. They're riding a bike and my child isn't. And then we start sort of applying that into school stuff or like what our children should be doing. And one of those is often reading. They're reading and my child isn't. Well, you know what? It's a legitimate sort of thing sometimes that we're looking at this, but are we stressing ourselves out about it? Like really, are we getting to this point that we're like working ourselves up and getting to that point of saying, help, my child isn't reading yet? Hi, and welcome to Learning Life, and thank you so much for watching today. I get asked fairly regularly, what do I do about my child? They're not yet reading fluently or properly, or whatever adverb you want to use. The first question I sort of throw back is, how old are they? This is really not to discount how the parent is feeling, but often the worry starts when the child is too young. Okay, we are expecting our children to be reading earlier and earlier. I've seen these programs out there, get your child to read like at this age because it'll set them up for success. Or your child can read in 30 days and it will set them up for success. The studies are actually showing that just because you're reading earlier does not set you up for success. But these programs are out there feeding on parents' fears about this. Some children do read before school. I was one of those. But they are the exception, not the rule. We don't need to be worrying so much. Look, I love reading. I've been a prolific reader all my life. And I love to help parents find those good expectations for their children to match it for where they are at. And this is why I bring these videos. I do have one on reading readiness. Check that out. And check out some of my other videos. But I do want to say thank you so much for watching today, for being part of this Learning Life, for your likes and your subscribes. And if you find these videos have been helpful for you, why not share them with a friend? Let me say that if kids don't learn to read before kindergarten or in kindergarten, they're not behind. This is not a sign that they have a learning disability, although some may. They just might not be ready or interested in reading yet. It's okay if your child doesn't learn to read until they are 7 or 8. Let me say that again. It's okay if your child doesn't learn to read until they are 7 or 8. For most children, this is truly when they are really ready to get into it and engage with it and take a hold of it. But, as I said earlier, we've got these programs or these expectations that are pushing our children younger and younger. Now, there might be some reasons that our children struggle. They are legitimate reasons, and it's okay to have concerns, but there are things that we can do about it. Point: reasons children might struggle. Sometimes it can be hard to see why our children struggle, because really there are many, many reasons. Maybe it truly is that your child is just not interested yet. They're just not emotionally ready yet. But there can be struggles. And if you are unsure, seek the advice of others who can assist you. It might just be more than this, it's boring, I don't want to read. I've heard that many times. There can be really good reasons for their reticence to be reading. It could be really good reasons that are holding it back and they're using that they are bored or they're not interested to try to cover that there is something going on. And these could be things like developmental delays. We usually pick those up when children are younger. So if your child has a motor or cognitive or language delay, this can affect their ability to learn and to read. There could be learning disabilities or attention difficulties, things like dyslexia, ADHD, processing disorders. There's so many sort of different neurological ones that can affect a child's ability to focus, to process language, to process phonics, and all of this can make reading difficult. Maybe it's just a lack of phonics skills. I love phonics. I really, really do. And I do believe that phonics is the foundation of reading. And if children have that solid understanding, it makes it a bit easier. Now, I know that there is the whole phonics and the whole language sort of debate. I do have a video on that too. But if we look at it, that children who have like phonics skills, then they're not going to be struggling. So if they're missing that, that could be some of the struggle. And we just need to go back and work with some phonics. Maybe it's a lack of exposure to reading. Not every child is really exposed to literature or has like this language-rich environment where they've got easy access to books and the libraries. Now, we know that pediatricians are encouraging us to read even to our infants. I did that. I love that. I actually read to them while they're in the womb. But if we don't have this exposure, then that can actually create difficulty with reading comprehension. It can create difficulty with like developing vocab, because this is where we get that, okay? This is where we learn new words from hearing them, and we can get it, especially with some books that have some beautiful, rich vocabulary in it. And as we talk about it, it's going to help with our comprehension. It could be a lack of reading practice. Okay, we always heard practice makes perfect. Well, maybe it's not perfect, but practice improves our skills. Okay, and this is where I feel like it's really important for developing that fluency, for developing the skills that we need. And if we're not engaging in regular reading, our children may struggle to keep up with their peers. And if they do struggle to keep up with their peers, then we often hear, well, no, it's just boring, or I don't want to. Again, to cover what they're truly feeling or what is going on. There can also be emotional factors, things like low self-esteem, anxiety, fear of failure, not getting it right. I have a daughter with that, and this can impact their motivation. This can actually then impact their ability to learn to read because it's holding them back. Maybe there are language barriers. So children who are learning a new language, so we've got immigrants coming in, or maybe they were born here, but their parents, their home language is not English. So then they will actually have some struggles when coming to read into that new language. So that's why we have ESL programs and why we have all of that for our kids. So as we can see, there's quite a few different things that could be causing our children to struggle, but we can help them. And we can help them whether it is with a struggle or whether it is just not interested right now. How can we help our children with that? How to help your children. If your child is past kindergarten, around the age of 7 to 8, okay, so we're not talking about 4, 5, 6, we're really looking at 7 to 8, and they are struggling to read or really just seem so uninterested, here are some ways in which you can help them. First of all, we want to assess their reading skill. We want to know where they are at with their reading. If you are homeschooling, there are tests available online that you can purchase, or even if your child is in school, there are online assessments. But if your child is in school, ask their teacher for advice. I will say that children are very good at covering where they are at. I have worked with teenagers who have made it all the way through school with an inability to be fluently reading and understanding. Okay, they have covered themselves quite well. But ask your child's teacher, ask friends who are teachers or anything like that that could really help you. Read aloud to your child. We want to continue reading aloud even as they're learning to read independently. So this is 7, 8, 9, even 10. Oh, look, I just think reading together as a family is such a wonderful thing. It develops listening skills, listening comprehension, like that vocab, hopefully a love for books. In this, we get to model fluent reading and engaging reading. We can discuss the story together to understand, when we can really fully engage in that, and they can hear that it's not just words on a page, but how it all works together. This is such a good thing. And we want to encourage reading for pleasure. I love reading for pleasure. Okay, we want to foster that love. We want to have a wide range of reading materials that match their interests and their reading level. So if your child is interested in trains, get books at their reading level about trains. If they are interested in other countries, find books about that at their reading level that they can be reading. What they are interested in and at a level they can read is going to really encourage this independent reading. Now, if you are unsure if the book is too difficult, here's a great little 5-finger rule. I've used this many, many times, even with children in a classroom. It's just get the book that they might be interested in reading and flipping it to a random page. You get them to read. And if they struggle to read more than 5 words on the page, it might be too advanced for them, so pick something else. And you can flip to a few pages and to see, they've got 5 words wrong on there. Maybe we want to back a little bit. If they've only got 1 or 2 wrong, then great. That's actually where they should be. We don't want them being frustrated, and we don't want them being turned even more off from reading. And let's not forget that it's not just picture books or chapter books. Let's think about graphic novels. Let's think about comics, magazines. These are all valid choices. And when we can find something that is interesting and engaging with them, this is great. As an example, my daughter who, if she's not sure I want to read that word because if I get it wrong, that's bad. She is just like me, get something wrong, don't want to do it. But when we worked through that and then we found graphic novels on things that she's really interested in, now she wants to be reading even more. So this is great. We matched her reading level with a type of reading that she really loves. And so that, to me, is one of the best things that we can be doing for our children. Let's make reading meaningful. We want to connect to real life situations and activities. So encourage your children to read recipe instructions or signs, labels. If you're writing a shopping list, they help you. You're going to the shops, they're reading things. You go to a museum or wherever it is you go, the zoo, we're reading those signs. We're finding out information because we're making that connection. Oh, reading is valuable. Reading has a purpose. Oh, I do need to be able to read to get through. And when we can connect all of that, this is when their little light bulbs go off, and maybe that's going to help them in wanting to read more. If you were going to be using practice and you're thinking we've got these things that we need to work on, let's do this balanced approach. So we're sort of mixing some things up about phonics-based instruction, especially if they need that, sight word recognition, and comprehension, which really is, let's ask them what they just read on the page. What is this about? Where do you think it's going to go? It's really actually easy. I think we get stuck into our head that reading comprehension is difficult. It's understanding what we're reading. So try to mix it up in your practice so that we're really building on these skills. Let's set aside time to read together. I know we talked about reading aloud, but let them read to you and you read to them, back and forth, and moving into that more independent reading. Or it could be as easy as sitting together, each reading. You are modeling, they're there, and if they have difficulties, they can be asking you. But when you've got this time together, they see reading isn't just something that we have to do to get through school, but I can actually enjoy it. Oh, look, my mom, my dad, my grandma, my auntie, whoever is actually really enjoying reading too. Get support if needed. If they are reading and they're struggling and it doesn't feel like it's getting any better, maybe even it's getting worse, despite what you're doing, get that support. Okay, we've got reading specialists. There are tutors. Schools have reading intervention programs. Professionals or people who are trained, however we want to look at it, can provide that proper instruction, tailored strategies that will address your child's specific needs. We need to remember that every child progresses at their own pace. So we need to have patience and support for them. We've got to stop looking at what the other kids are doing and sort of trying to calculate age differences and what's going on. We can shake that off. Don't be so worried if they're taking a little longer to what you think should be the norm, because the norms change. When I was teaching kindergarten, how we viewed it and what they are learning in kindergarten is very different to 20 odd years later. Okay? This is, to me, an interesting thing. What we are expecting of 8 and 9-year-olds now is very different to what I learned in Teachers College about what 8 and 9-year-olds should be doing. We're pushing it earlier and earlier. I'm not a big fan of that. I think sometimes we have to come back to child development and go, oh, this is where it's at. Our children aren't ready to learn until they're about 6. So if your children are 7 and 8 and still not reading fluently, it's okay. Some children will read earlier, but they are the exception. Some will read later, and that is okay. When we provide that supportive environment, when we celebrate their progress, and when we continue to encourage them, it's going to get there. Maybe they need some additional help. Maybe they need some additional motivation. With my daughters, I now pay them to read. It's like $1 per chapter book that they read because they want to earn money and I want them to read. And so chores we do as part of the family, reading can earn you money, and they're actually having fun with it. They're getting their practice. They're building up their skills. And in that, they can become, more confident. And that's the same for your children as well. Let's take that deep breath and go, it's okay that they are not at where other children are at because your child is your child. And there are things that we can do if they are struggling. But if they are only 5 or 6 and not really reading, it's okay. If they are 7 and 8 and sort of reticent and really not wanting to be doing it, it's okay. There might be some struggles, but even if there aren't, there are things that we can do to encourage them and build them. With practice, our children will develop their skills and they will become a more confident reader. Take that to heart and not worry about the rest. Well, thank you so much for watching today. I really hope that this helped you. If you have any questions, please feel free to comment below. And if it's something that you learned from and think you might have a friend, please feel free to share because I love that we get to learn this life together. There are also ways to help us get these videos out, and you can do that by becoming a champion. So check that out at patreon.com or at my website, LearningThis.Life.